Yes, what's up? What's happening? I'm George Balekji. He's Sean McGuire. This is Foxboro Rush. We got your full coverage on Patriots storylines, NFL storylines. Today we're talking Jordan Love, the biggest quarterback up for a new contract right now. Sean, how we doing today, though, my friend?
Not too bad, George. How are you? Nice, pleasant Monday.
You know, Jordan Love, he's going to get paid because he kicked your Cowboys' ass in the playoffs, right? That's what's going to get him that $56 million a year. Hey, we got a full.
That took about the 10 seconds that I expected it would take.
Under 30 seconds, and I crapped on the Cowboys already. I'm proud of myself for that one. Full show we got for you guys today. We're talking about some of the moves Eliot Wolf tried to make to get a wide receiver one in New England. Sean's been all throughout Patriots offseason, minicamp, post-draft coverage, getting ready for training camp. We'll talk about some surprise cuts he sees happening out in New England. We'll get into the Jordan Love holdout, and then we'll talk about Fox Sports and the ranking of the top 10 rosters in the NFL. But, Sean, let's start with the Brandon Aiyuk saga that is in New England. Obviously, we know Brandon Aiyuk has been doing a holdout with the 49ers, want to franchise him, want to play on his remaining year. He wants to get paid. Asking for a trade. Commanders, Steelers, Patriots, all could be suitors. But the latest coming out that right before the draft, the Patriots, that had the 3rd overall and the 34th overall pick, tried to trade that 34th pick to the 49ers to get Brandon Aiyuk. They said no. We know the Pats shopped around that pick, even tried to swap with the Bills, who were at 32, to go up and get a receiver who we don't know. Eventually, that pick became Jalen Polk at 37. Cool. We got the numbers out of the way. But what do you make of this, of these reports coming out now, and how do you think it affects the Patriots going after Brandon Aiyuk? And also, we now have a better idea of the trade value and what the 49ers are asking for if they want to get rid of Brandon Aiyuk.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great. I think, Eliot Wolf came out before the draft and confirmed, yes, we are interested. We're still having talks about, 4 receivers, everything like that. But I think kind of seeing the price that they offered and what they offered, it like adds some legitimacy, maybe. I think it's a very valuable offer. Probably the best that they would give, and probably the best that they will give in the future, really. But yeah, I think it was great to see that, and just very respectable. And in terms of do I see it playing out now that Aiyuk is going to be in New England at all? I don't. I think it's very hard to see that at this point unfolding, just because the 49ers have been, so steadfast in the fact that they're keeping him, and for good reason. I mean, they're a Super Bowl contender. It wouldn't make any sense from a team building standpoint to get rid of arguably your best offensive player, certainly one of your top offensive players. Especially given the fact that you're kind of in that win now window.
Yeah, there you go. We got it. 3rd time's the charm. I mean, they are, though. They're in a win-now window because they have Brock Purdy still on his rookie contract. They have a healthy Christian McCaffrey, who they just extended. They have a Bosa. They have a Leonard Floyd now opposite of him. Debo, Brandon Aiyuk, still there. They just drafted Ricky Pearsall. He's kind of the wild card in all this of, does he affect Debo's future in San Francisco? But end of the day, they were a Patrick Mahomes away from winning a Super Bowl because if they weren't facing Mahomes, let's face it, they are the best team in the NFL roster on both ends of the ball, from front to back, from inside to outside. But if they trade Brandon Aiyuk, this offense looks vastly different. That is a guy that is 17, 18 yards per reception downfield, is a great deep ball threat, extends the entire field, and keeps the defense honest. And that's what opens up everything for George Kittle, for Deebo Samuel, for Christian McCaffrey underneath. And don't sleep on the fact that Brock Purdy, actually rated by PFF, is the highest graded deep ball throwing quarterback from last season. And why is that? Because of an elite receiver like Brandon Aiyuk. If the San Francisco 49ers trade away Brandon Aiyuk and get a 2nd-round pick in return, whether in this upcoming draft or a 1st-round pick down the road, because I don't believe the Patriots, if we're talking about a Patriots scenario, should trade their 1st-rounder, then the San Francisco 49ers became a worse team. And the Detroit Lions pass them right there as the best team in the NFC. Maybe even the Eagles with all the investments they made in their secondary in this last draft, right? So from a San Fran standpoint, it doesn't make sense to trade Brandon Aiyuk. I think personally, from a Brandon Aiyuk standpoint, I don't know why he wants to be traded. I get it. He wants a long-term deal. He wants around $28 to $30 million a year. We'll see how much the 49ers are offering him. But I get it. He wants that long-term security. But if he gets traded to a New England, he's 3 years away from the playoffs, let alone even being in the mix for the Super Bowl. I see and I like to hear Eliot Wolf making the tries. We know the Pats went at Calvin Ridley and it didn't work out. We now hear they're going at Brandon Aiyuk. What do you make of this, though? Because I do like it. The persistent effort from Eliot Wolf, now leading this front office, the de facto GM, constantly going and trying to get a wide receiver one for now his rookie quarterback.
Yeah, no, I think that's, that kind of tells you a lot. It's, it was a Calvin Ridley, based on Eliot Wolf's kind of confirmation that they were trying the trade market. I would say it's fair to assume they had some calls about T. Higgins. Those obviously didn't play out either. We saw right around the draft as well. I think it was even draft night that there was rumors that the Patriots, while having calls with the Niners for Aiyuk, they were also kind of kicking the tires a little bit on Deebo Samuel. So I do think it has, like you said, it's shown that persistence and, willingness to really try. I do think it kind of tells you where they're at, though, that all these guys, none of them are here. Calvin Ridley specifically, he's free agent. He's not coming this way. So, I think it'll be kind of interesting to see how it moves forward in terms of how they're able to develop a player and stuff like that. But I definitely agree with it. It's good to see, how much effort they're putting in to do that.
Yeah, remember Calvin Ridley chose Will Levis and the Tennessee Titans over the New England Patriots. This is not the same Patriots,
though, right?
Yeah, it was his girlfriend. Yeah. What was it? Closer to home, wanting a house in Tennessee, Nashville. I don't know how it is. The one thing I go around with, though, because if the Patriots are asked for their 2025, first rounder, their upcoming draft pick, I say no, because that is a top 5, top 10 pick at worst, right?
Yep.
But I'm also just thinking of what the number is, because Brandon Aiyuk, the report in this one too was New England was willing to pay Brandon Aiyuk around $28 million a year, and that would put him in that top 5, top 7 range of AAV. Think of the highest total value for a wide receiver contract. It's $140 million. That's Devontae Adams and Justin Jefferson. The highest AAV, $35 million a year. That's Justin Jefferson. Highest total guaranteed, $110 million for Justin Jefferson. We see what the trend is. The best wide receiver in the game completely reset the market. Now, would Brandon Aiyuk break any of those numbers? No, I don't think so. He shouldn't get paid like that. But look at the $84 million guaranteed for A.J. Brown, who's making $32 around a year, or $77 million guaranteed for Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think what we can see is a total value for Brandon Aiyuk, if he came to New England, of $125 million. That'd be third highest in the NFL. A guaranteed of $80 million. Again, that'd be third highest. And with an AAV of $31 to $31.5 million. Again, third highest in the NFL. And if you give him a contract like that, it takes him through his age 26, 27, 28, 29 season, and it lines him up to get paid again right before he hits 30. And that can either be an extension with New England, or that can be him becoming a free agent, choosing to walk elsewhere. But also what happens the next 4 seasons, that's when the team control, and before you have to pick up that 5th-year option for Drake Maye happens, Brandon Aiyuk leaves. The Patriots then turn to paying Drake Maye. That's how I see it going down, because otherwise, if you're the Patriots, you either have to give up a lot of draft compensation, a lot of draft picks, and pay the man, or maybe you work out a deal where there's incentive-based draft picks that can accelerate from a second to a first down the road. But no matter what, they're going to have to pay a wide receiver one. And you mentioned T. Higgins, because what the Patriots can do overall is wait for free agency, but the wide receiver market's going to go up, especially when CeeDee Lamb gets his deal. And they have the option of, do we bring in T. Higgins, see if he wants to sign? Do we bring in Brandon Aiyuk, see if he wants to sign, along with other names? I just love seeing Eliot Wolf consistently going after and assessing, to me, what's their biggest need on offense. They have a lot of needs. Their biggest need on offense is truly a wide receiver.
Yeah, I would 1,000% agree with that. I mean, we talk a lot about the offensive tackle and left tackle and everything like that, but I would definitely agree that wide receiver is the top priority. And that's kind of what the debate is now, right? At this point, you just got to hope that a free agent comes this way, because I don't think they should offer a first-round pick for Aiyuk. Maybe if they were able to get into that 30 or whatever, 28, 30 range that they were trying to at the end of the first round in April, maybe that is used to get Aiyuk. But kind of the same thing, they're going to have a top 5, top 10 pick next year. They're probably going to be at, 35 or something early in the second round again. So maybe you can kind of get another receiver with that. But I think at this point, you just got to hope that a free agent comes.
Yeah, at this point, and I agree with you, like offensive tackle is a massive need, but what have they done this offseason? Caden Wallace, Chuks Okorafor, re-signed Mike Onwenu. Whether he's going to be a guard or a tackle, we will see literally in the upcoming days at training camp, but in the upcoming weeks and months leading up to week 1. But they've addressed this need for offensive tackle the best way they saw it as. I don't agree with the approach, but wide receiver, they still need to address it. Yes, I know, folks. They drafted Jalen Polk. They drafted Javon Baker. But those guys are going to be wide receiver 3s at most of this season. You have to understand your expectations. Jalen Polk may be a wide receiver 2 at best, but it's far cry away from a dynamic outside playmaker that stresses defenses. And if you bring in an elite receiver, it helps your play caller, Alex Van Pelt, who's a first-time play caller. It helps your offensive line, who isn't that great and can't block long, if you have someone that could get outside and get separation. And it helps Drake Maye, whenever he's a starter under center, to have that elite wide receiver on the outside, that elite weapon to throw to, and honestly use it as a security blanket overall. But we're talking quarterbacks, we're talking receivers. Sean, I want to get into an article you wrote. You can find it at Nesson.com, on Nesson.com. Patriots surprise cuts after training camp. So you're projecting what we can see around 8 players that could be a surprise to many fans of, wait, that guy's getting cut already? I'm going to list off the names, Sean. Let me know if I left anyone off. But on this, you have Bailey Zappi, Joe Milton, Cole Strange, Juju Smith-Schuster, Tyquan Thornton, Austin Hooper, Chad Ryland, or Marcellus Dial. So that's 8 players you have there. Who at you jumps off, and what's the one player you're focusing on the most of like, hey, is this someone I'd pay attention to because I don't see him being a Patriot for much longer?
Yeah, I think the name that kind of stands out is Tyquan Thornton in terms of like pretty much the obvious one to me. I think that, it's going to come down to him and Juju, and it's really Demario Douglas is a definite. Jalen Polk is a definite. Javon Baker is a definite. Kendrick Bourne, I would say, is a definite. KJ Osborne, I would assume is a roster lock at this point as well. But then you get into, those guys, Juju, Tyquan, Jalen Reagor, they're fighting for 1, maybe 2 spots, depending on how the Patriots kind of deal with like Kendrick Bourne to start the season. But yeah, I would say the one that kind of jumps out to me is, Bailey Zappi. I think he's as good as gone.
Yeah, no, wait, I want to hear that. Why Bailey Zappi to you right now is as good as gone?
I mean, this is kind of a conversation that we've had for since, the end of the draft in April. I mean, the writing was on the wall as soon as they selected Drake Maye, which was, kind of the obvious decision at that point. But then when they doubled down with Joe Milton, it really became like, Bailey's job is gone. And so I think I think that's going to play out that way. I'm actually curious to see, and I wrote about this as well, I'm curious to see if they do keep 3 quarterbacks, on their initial 53. So if they keep Joe Milton, and a lot of that is just because of when it comes that time, late August, there's so many roster shuffling and roster gymnastics really as you cut down the roster to 53. And we saw how Bill Belichick handled the Bailey Zappi thing last year. I mean, sometimes you just kind of might have to roll the dice because you want to keep one player over the other. And, if the Patriots release Joe Milton, I would assume that's with, their hope that they re-sign him to the practice squad. And so maybe he continues to develop in New England, but I think that's something that I could see playing out too. I think a big conversation right now is like, yes, the Patriots are going to keep 3 quarterbacks. But I do think that there's a chance that when it comes down to it, it's really just Jacoby Brissett and Drake Maye on the initial 53.
The way I look at for Bailey Zappi, I understand the 3 quarterbacks. This kid is still auditioning for the offensive staff in New England and basically for the entire NFL, because what he's going to hope is throughout training camp, they're going to have joint practices, the Patriots will, and obviously they'll have their preseason games. If he could go out there week 1, week 2 of their preseason and show he can play in now another new system, which he was drafted 3 years ago, and he was under Joe Judge and Matt Patricia, Bill O'Brien, and now Alex Van Pelt. If he can grasp a 4th system in 4 years, because let's go back to his college days, I mean, there's upside there. And Bailey Zappi's ceiling is a backup quarterback, but one that you trust can come in for 1 game or a few and keep everything on schedule and keep the offense in check and not lose you games. But if he could also go out and prove that to the Patriots staff, they might look at their quarterback room and go, okay, so right now Jacoby Brissett's our week 1 starter. Drake Maye, we got to get his footwork right. We got to get his throwing motion quicker. We have to get a quicker release from him. And also we got to make sure our offensive line protects him. But if we don't want him to be a backup quarterback because in case stuff hits the fan, who's going to be the actual backup on game day? Because there could be a practice squad guy. And that's where I see Joe Milton landing, in which the Patriots can cut him and practice squad him or someone else can take him. But Jacoby's a QB1 to me. And then that is the actual toss-up between Drake Maye and Bailey Zappi of who is the backup. And the reason for that is they don't want to rush and screw up any progress they make with Drake Maye. I think he's going to dazzle us in training camp. I think he's going to look terrific. He's going to be a huge upgrade from what we've seen in that position over the last few years. But again, is he ready to be an NFL quarterback consistently week to week? And is their offensive line ready to protect him? Because I think that's the most important thing in all this. So that's why I don't see Bailey Zappi going anywhere. But what about Cole Strange? How did you get to that conclusion, add Cole Strange to this list?
I got to double down on this Bailey Zappi thing. I'm very surprised to hear you say this.
It has to make sense for the team because if Jacoby Brissett goes out there and gets injured and then you throw in Drake Maye in there and he's not ready and the offensive line's not ready, then you're going to see Drake Maye regress. I want him to play. He needs live game action. That's the only way he'll get better and the only way you can assess what you have in Drake Maye. But I'm looking at early on in the season. If something happens week 1, week 2, they have to prepare for every scenario because this offensive line, Sean, isn't good. It's not good. You have Cole Strange on this list, who's your 29th overall pick a few years ago. But when we look at the Josh Allens and the Patrick Mahomeses and the CJ Strouds and right now Jordan Love, these young quarterbacks that came in as a starter and performed well, they had good offensive tackles. They had serviceable offensive tackles at the minimum. Well, the kid you took in Caden Wallace, where he told us he's a left tackle, last time we saw him, he was at right. Chuks Okorafor, who's been in the league for 6 years, has only taken 2 snaps at left tackle. Right now, he's your starting left tackle. Now, of course, what it boils down to, who's the best 5 that play together. And if Drake Maye can get the ball out in under 2.8 seconds, and he's more mobile than Jacoby, which helps this offensive line, it could all work out perfect. But I'm not going to set sails and ship Bailey Zappi out right away because I want to protect the long-term investment that we have in Drake Maye, that the Patriots have in Drake Maye. I want to protect that investment, and I don't want to screw him up in year 1, and that sets you behind in year 2. Because as we saw, all the promise we had in Mac Jones in year 1, they screwed it up in year 2, and he never bounced back. It's about breaking bad habits out of Drake Maye, and you cannot rush him onto an actual field going against live bullets before he's ready. And that's why I see the value in Bailey Zappi. I don't think Joe Milton's close to being ready to an NFL quarterback, but Bailey Zappi has shown he can keep your offense on schedule and execute an NFL offense. He's done it with awful play calling and 2 morons running an offense. And he's been able to do it, though, with Bill O'Brien, who is a great offensive-minded guy who had one hand tied behind his back of who his offensive coaching staff was. But he did it with Bill O'Brien. So he's shown me 2 years over 2 different scenarios he can do it. That's why I'm not sold on getting Bailey Zappi out of here. Now, if there was a 3rd-round pick floated out there, a 2nd-round pick, then I'm going, all right, trade it because he's nothing but a backup quarterback. I play every scenario, Sean. I'm thinking of everything, man.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I think I understood. So where you're coming from right now, I understood that when we were in, a few months ago, when we were in, May and June, they weren't going to cut him right away because what if something happens? Jacoby Brissett suffers an injury the first day of training camp or whatever, the case may be. So I understand that, but I can't see them keeping Bailey Zappi just in the fluke chance that their starter goes down with a season-ending injury. Because then, maybe you have to throw Drake Maye in that game or, he plays the second half of week 1 or something like that. But then if that's the case, then you just figure it out the next week and you sign someone who's you could probably sign Bailey Zappi at the time. And, you sign him up for nothing at the time and he comes in. And so that's kind of how I view it. I do think that it made plenty of sense for them to keep him in May, in June. But if you're getting into late August and Bailey Zappi earns a roster spot in the 53-man roster because of the off chance that your starting quarterback has a season-ending injury, I just can't see I can't see your best 53 players on that roster then.
And it's a Bailey Zappi that can be an emergency QB, or it's a Bailey Zappi that can be on a practice squad, or it's a Bailey Zappi that, again, is in case of emergency. So that's why I understand, yes, he can get cut and brought back, and understand the minutia of constructing a roster in the NFL. It gets very into the details, very into the weeds. I'm just not going to write off Bailey Zappi being in New England just yet because there's for two cases where he's shown them the last 2 years. They know what they get with him as a backup. And to me, it's valuable, especially with how important the position is. But now, okay, let's say Drake Maye in July and August is just on fire, and he proves he can be ready to play. And you look at your offensive line and go, we're going to run heavy. We have two good running backs. We can get enough time with this offensive line, then cut ties with Bailey Zappi. Because if you feel you're ready and the entire situation around Drake Maye is ready, on top of him being then if stuff hits a fan or if nothing happens, then by week 7, week 8, you go, let's put Drake Maye in. Let's get him a half season of starter reps. Or by week 10, let's give him 7 games, right? Mm-hmm. Then they go that course. I want to go with the Cole Strange, though, one. What an interesting saga it's been for him. We know what happened. Bill Belichick, like one of his final pieces doing the Jake Gyllenhaal kiss and peace out the door to the Patriots was, I'm taking a guard out of the FCS at 29 overall when they needed a quarterback, they needed a receiver, all that. Cole Strange never got healthy, was never right last season, didn't finish as an active player at the end of the season because he had to get surgery. But why do you have him on possibly a player you see getting cut on this list?
Yeah, so I think, and we might even have this conversation before, I think like entering the offseason, I didn't think his roster spot for next year was a lock. And that was before everything came, all the reports came out about how serious the injury was and the fact that he's going to miss significant time. Like I felt like his roster spot was up in the air prior to that. And so kind of disclaimer with this, because he can start on PUP, and that would mean that he's not against their initial 53-man roster. So it wouldn't serve as a huge benefit to cut him in late August in comparison to, September or something like that, whenever you're kind of needing to make moves, roster transactions and stuff. But I would just say that there's a lot of things working against Cole Strange. They have a lot of healthy bodies. They have a lot of young, healthy guys. The first rounder that just came in, Layden Robinson. I mean, he's now part of the organization, and he was drafted by this organization. Cole Strange wasn't. He was drafted, like you just said, he was drafted by Belichick. So, in addition to Layden Robinson, you have City So,
Antonio Mafi.
Yep. I was going to say they don't have the high end talent in terms of like that, but they have a lot of young, healthy guys. So I could just see, I don't know. I could just see, all things kind of considered, Cole Strange's long-term availability, as well as the depth chart, how it currently looks. I could see that being marking the end of Cole Strange.
Yeah. Since Cole Strange was drafted, I mean, he's one of 5 interior offensive linemen that New England has drafted, has poured draft assets into. But Cole Strange, Jake Andrews, City So, and Antonio Mafi, 4 of the 5 were the previous regime, was the macro Bill Belichick front office. Layden Robinson's the only safe spot. He was picked by Eliot Wolf. And when that pick came down, and again, it was the 5th interior offensive lineman in the last 3 drafts that they took, that was a reminder of how long this rebuild is going to be, because with Eliot Wolf leading things now, it takes a year for a new front office to really have their dudes in the building. It takes a year from them to actually go, okay, now we can move forward and really start making progress on offense, because they need to get their personnel to their schemes, what Alex Van Pelt wants in the building. So that's why, and with these changeovers of offensive coordinator alone, from Matt Patricia to Bill O'Brien to Alex Van Pelt, that's why it's going to be a long process. City So did look great, especially towards the end of last season. Jake Andrews is your starting center. Mike Onwenu could be your right guard, and that can throw everything in a flub, but then that does put questions to Cole Strange, to Antonio Mafi as well, and to Jake Andrews and his future. So that's one I can't argue with, and it has been with Cole Strange, drafted for a different scheme, a different offensive system altogether. He just hasn't been healthy, so to see him start on the PUP, and maybe if it doesn't work out, yes, I think it could be after this season, but it wouldn't shock me in the least bit if he's done. All right, make sure to check out the latest episode of Boston Has Entered the Chat. We got new episodes dropping every Monday through Friday, wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple, Amazon Prime. Watch along on YouTube and Nesson Twitch as well. Subscribe there too. Make sure to call into the chat. Leave a voicemail, 617-790-0928, or email thechat@nesson.com to join the conversation. All right, Sean, let's get into the biggest story to me in the NFL right now. And I'm not being hyperbolic at all. I'm being dead serious. And that is Jordan Love holding in with the Green Bay Packers. Now, the general manager of the Packers, Brian Gutekunst, held a press conference and said Love's agents and representatives told him he will not practice or take the field until the new deal is done. Now, those folks hopping on X or Twitter or are in Green Bay, they're going to see images of Jordan Love without any pads on, walking onto a practice field, all smiles with Matt LaFleur, which I think is a great thing to see because he's in the building, he's in meetings, but rightfully so, this guy is saying, I'm not going to take another snap in practice until you pay me. Right now, he's on the last year of an extension he signed last season, which gave them some wiggle room to work with. But he's in line to get paid. What do you make of Jordan Love holding in with the Packers right now?
Yeah, I think you kind of just touched on it, rightfully so. I mean, I without a doubt agree with the decision. I mean, he was drafted into the situation that he was, and the team had all the leverage. And he played 10 games his first 2 years. He went through the constant up and downs that it is when you're Aaron Rodgers' teammate. And, now he actually has the leverage himself, and good for him. He should use it. He deserves it. He, pretty much thrown into the mix last year, very young team. Expectations certainly were not playoff bound expectations. And he did just that. 9-8 as a starter, 32 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, the playoff win in Dallas that you thankfully mentioned earlier. He, like I said, he has all the leverage now, and he made the most of it last year. So good for him.
Yeah. Last 10 games of the season, 21 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, goes into Dallas, lights that defense up, especially him and Romeo Doubs. 272 yards, 3 touchdowns. I'm not being mean at this point. Like, let me say this right now.
The truth hurts.
I am unapologetically a massive Jordan Love fan. Yes, I worked in Green Bay, in Madison, Wisconsin. And the night he was drafted, I was beside myself. I almost collapsed on the floor. You still had Aaron Rodgers playing at an MVP level who needed receivers, and they took him. And I was like, what the heck? And he waited. He waited to start. And then he came in and he struggled the first 7-8 games of the season. But then from the halfway point of the season on, he put together a sample size, in my opinion, is big enough not to justify getting this contract, but to justify going to the front office of the Packers and going, look at what I did. Look how good I am. I know the system. Matt LaFleur is not going anywhere. I'm his guy at quarterback. We have all these young receivers in the room. It's a quarterback league. Pay me now. He did it perfect, and good on him. If he proves to be a fluke and completely collapses from this point on, this is business in the NFL of having a quarterback because the Packers will pay him because they have to, and they would rather have somebody than nobody. Because go across the league and you can see the purgatory that many teams are in or the trouble they face if they have a nobody. But I watch the game. I see what he does, how he executes, how he impacts a game, and I think he'll be worth it. What gets me is the payday we're going to see him get. Because think of the Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Trevor Lawrence. All recently, young quarterbacks have signed a 5-year extension. This guy is going to ink a 5-year, $280 million contract because that gives him $56 million a year, which is better than Joe Burrow, better than Trevor Lawrence, better than Jared Goff. He's going to reset the market. And now we'll go, all right, what would the guaranteed money be? I mean, he could go $225 guaranteed million, and that beats Joe Burrow again. The big thing in all this, Sean, is that if you're the Packers, you actually want to get this deal done, which they said they'll get it in the coming days, because you want to get it done before your boy Dak gets paid. Same thing. Cowboys have to pay Dak. You can say what you want about him, his performance in the playoffs, how he is as a long-term starter. But when he gets paid, as is Jordan Love, they're going to reset the market once again. It's not who's the highest paid. You want to be the most recent paid. And if they give him a 5-year, $280 million extension, that would take him into his age 31 season. And by then, which would be 6 years from now, he plays the last year of his $12 million extension this season, then gets at $56 million a year moving forward. He's going to look like a bargain in 2 to 3 years because you give him this contract. And like I'm doing, I am projecting how good Jordan Love will be. That's how these contracts work. Everyone that hated what Trevor Lawrence got paid, same thing. The Jaguars are projecting what he would get paid. So that's my big deposition on Jordan Love and why he should get paid, because I do say it, Sean, as much as I said, could be a fluke, I think he's a real deal, man.
Yeah, no, and you say 5 for 280. I saw something, I can't remember who had it, but I saw it was a projection for like 5 for 250, which, right in line with pretty much all the guys you mentioned, right in line with Jalen Hurts as well. So I could see it being like that. And then I mean, geez, he's 30 years old and he gets another massive extension right after that, at the tail end of his prime, but, maybe throughout his prime, really. Mm-hmm. And I would definitely agree. I would say that it's a little, I like how you kind of phrased it. It is a little early. We only saw it for 1 year, but that's nothing against him. He's doing exactly what he should be. And like you said, quarterback purgatory is the worst position you can be in sports. So right now you have a legit quarterback. He looks like, a top 10 guy for, maybe the rest of his career for a long time. So you got to pay him.
I love that you said he looks like a top 10 guy, maybe the rest of his career. I agree. And I think the important part and what the Packers are going to look at is, are there key guys on the outside, like a Luke Musgrave starting with the tight ends, right? But then again, to the Romeo Dubs, the Jaden Reeds, the Christian Watsons, if he can stay healthy, all these players, Dontavian Wicks, those are rookies under team control. And they will be under team control for the next 3 to 4 years, depending on where they're drafted and depending on what year they came into the league. But this is when you pay your quarterback. They just extended Kenny Clark. They just gave Rashawn Gary a payday. They've seen other key defensive players walk, and they've let them walk. But it's now is the time to pay a quarterback. Yes, he didn't start, and they didn't get as much out of him on a rookie scale contract as they wanted, but Aaron Rodgers showed them he could keep playing. Mm-hmm. And he overstayed his welcome in Green Bay. I won't disagree with that. But the kid stepped in, and again, you said it. Well, he showed us. He didn't even show us for an entire season. But what he displayed for the second half of the season, and again, into a playoff game where he 275 yards, 3 touchdowns, and picked apart a playoff caliber defense. Say what you want of their health, picked apart a playoff caliber defense again on the road. This is the type of stuff that gets these guys paid. And it could go one of two ways, right? Where the Packers could pay him, and they could also look like Daniel Jones and the New York Giants, but I don't believe so because he has that type of ability as a passer. And that's how I think it's going to go, where it's going to be an investment like we've seen with teams. The Bengals made with Joe Burrow. They just need to keep him healthy. They need to get an offensive line. But you have everything in place. Pay the quarterback because Jordan Love won't go anywhere, and Matt LaFleur is not going anywhere with this system because he is your head coach. And last I checked, and it's the best thing to be in favor for him and Brian Gutekunst, their timeline is tied to Jordan Love. And for as long as he's there, we'll see. And he keeps progressing, and the team takes steps forwards, going from 1 playoff win to 2, to being contenders in the NFC as a whole. LaFleur, Gutekunst, and Jordan Love aren't going anywhere. So they have a long-term deal. And that's, again, why he comes out. And we've seen reports come out saying that a deal should get done in the coming days. And I don't know. How would you feel about it? Let's say Jordan Love gets $56 million a year. We can even float out guaranteed money, though, because we can see a Jared Goff contract come through where there's a high total value, but it's really only $170 guaranteed. Jared Goff's making the 3rd highest annual money, $53 million, but his $170 million guaranteed is 7th highest. So let's say Jordan Love lands somewhere like that. But then that resets the market for your boy Dak, Sean, and Dak is going to break the bank.
I mean, they have screwed up every which way they can. I mean, and it's not just Dak, it's literally the entire roster. Like, it is just, it's impressive, and they do it time and time again. And then Jerry comes out and says, yeah, we're not worried about Dak getting paid. And I'm like, yeah, but now you're going to give him 65 rather than 55. And it's just, that's how they do it constantly. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think that the Jordan Love, it's, the train has been on the tracks. I mean, it's not Jordan Love that is, doing this single-handedly. It's the Cowboys organization has done this to themselves. Quick tangent, sorry.
No, go. You know what? Bring it on, man. I did it in the opening 30 seconds. I'm doing it now. I don't mean to take low blows, but also, like, let's treat this as therapy. You know what I mean?
Well deserved.
This is a therapy session. And, I do come in like I do with Mike Cole, who sits across from you. I love talking Packers with him. And same thing with you. I love talking Cowboys with you. And I ask you, I'm like, what do you think the latest is? So let's treat this as therapy. I know, look, I could be a prick at times. But at the end of the day, Sean, I do love you and I do care about you. So it's coming from a good place for me to ask you about the Cowboys. Now, here's something good. Let's talk good. Fox Sports put out their top 10 rosters in the NFL, starting from 10 to 1. Number 10, the Cleveland Browns. Number 9, the Dallas Cowboys. Still got a lot of talent. Going to get healthy in the secondary. Number 8, the New York Jets. Again, getting healthy with a great defense. Number 7, the Dolphins. That shocked me a little. 6 is the Ravens. 5 is the Texans. 4 is the Lions. 3 is the Chiefs. 2, the Eagles. Number 1 is the San Francisco 49ers. That top 3 is funny. 49ers 1, Eagles 2, reigning Super Bowl champs, going for a third straight, the Chiefs at 3, but is a reflection of a lot of turnover. What did you make of this top 10?
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough to put anyone ahead of San Fran. When I was looking at it, I looked at the Fox Sports link too, and it was kind of a cool, like they classified it in a cool way. It was like blue chips and, X factors and that sort of thing. And San Fran had 10 blue chip players, and I would say that's well deserved. I mean, just offensive playmakers absolutely everywhere. I thought the Philly thing, and this is again maybe hopefully me being a little down on Philly. I'm curious to see how the Jason Kelce retirement kind of impacts the offensive line that's just been so dominant. Mm-hmm. I think that could take a step back, and I think that, now you have Saquon, you have Jalen Hurts. I don't think the running game is going to be not good or not productive, but I'm curious to see, how the Jason Kelce retirement impacts things. The Lions, a little bit of a surprise, but that's probably well deserved too. I mean, their biggest weakness was at corner, and they went out and they signed Carlton Davis, or actually traded for Carlton Davis, and then added, I think it was both, each of their first 2 draft picks were at corner. Yep. The Alabama kid, I know, is the first rounder. So, they addressed their biggest weakness this offseason, just a really good roster, and down to the Cowboys, nine blue chip players, and they can never win a playoff game. And it's just, it is what it is. It's disappointing every offseason. I think I've kind of tried to take a step back this offseason and been like, you know what, I'm not going to invest all my emotions into this team. I'm not going to let this how this team performs on Sunday just ruin my Monday and Tuesday. So we'll see if I'm saying the same thing once mid-September rolls around. Never mind mid-December. But yeah, so a very talented team that usually can't win when it matters.
Having their head coach and their quarterback both ready to hit free agency, just a wild spot to be in. And Micah Parsons needs to get paid. But you mentioned it, Terrion Arnold and Ennis Rakestraw Jr., the first top 2 picks by the Lions in this draft. Huge need. They have every box checked on offense. Their offensive line, stacked studs. Their running backfield with Jahmyr Gibbs, stacked studs. Jared Goff got paid. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta. They have every box checked on offense. They go out, get 2 corners, which they need. Oh, by the way, I'm blanking on his name, but they have the kid out of Michigan entering his 3rd year as a defensive end. He's been fantastic. Hopefully you can save me on this one. Thank you. Aiden Hutchinson. Boom. There we go. Yeah. They have a good defensive tackle in the middle. Brian Branch, how he served as a draft pick from last year, being so versatile on defense, helping shore up the back end. And then they go out, get those 2 corners. And look, the Eagles did the same thing. Kenyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. Their top 2 picks in the draft. Again, figuring out their outside corners, their boundary corners. They need to fix a lot of things about that roster. What gets me, though, is I like where the Lions are. I think the Eagles should be lower. And I do think in the cards of cards, you still have to put the Houston Texans higher. And I really do. And I know this is going to sound like such a Packers-friendly podcast, but I think the Green Bay Packers should be higher up on this list too, because that defense has been set. Yes, they bring in a Newsy and Jeff Hafley, but he has pro experience, ran Boston College, we saw it up close, and always the strongest part of his team was his secondary. The biggest weakness for the Packers over the years, the secondary. If you can scheme a defense to only rush 3 or 4, get to the quarterback, that is the best thing that can happen to you in the world. I have not seen the Packers, since Matt LaFleur has been in Green Bay, have a good defense. He has been awful at hiring DCs, maybe finally gets it right. But then the Texans at 5, that's a team I would bump up, and that's where I would see the Eagles fall behind. I really think, and it's a Patrick Mahomes effect, I'll go Niners 1, Chiefs 2, Lions 3, Texans 4, and then I would have the Eagles on the outside looking in, but still at the 5 spot because of how they're able to reload, losing some guys up front in free agency. Obviously, they have the best wide receiver room in the league. They have a great offensive coordinator in Bobby Slowick. Again, that's big for Detroit that Ben Johnson is still there as their play caller. Bobby Slowick in Houston will be the next hot commodity as a head coach after what he does with year 2 in CJ Stroud. The defense has been good. The offense has been great. I hope the offensive line stays healthy. But the Texans is a team that, to me, jumped out of not being in there. And yeah, I'm putting a team in. I would bump out the Browns because you mentioned it. What I liked about this wild card is it mentioned a wild card with each team. What I liked about this article, the wild card for the Browns is their quarterback situation. Because will Deshaun Watson make it through a full season? And this is crazy to say. Can Deshaun Watson execute at the same level that Joe Flacco did? I don't know. Crazy, isn't it?
It is. That's the world we live.
The world we live in with him with a fully guaranteed $233 million contract, and they lose their offensive coordinator, Alex Van Pelt, who got fired. Again, remember, after that great year they had, losing their top 3 tackles, losing Nick Chubb, Joe Flacco going out, winning games and playoff games. Ownership went in to Kevin Stefanski, and they wanted changeover because they didn't understand how their $233 million quarterback wasn't playing at a high level. So their look there was, and their solution they thought was fire the offensive staff. They just did the most with the least, injuries and quarterback, because they weren't making it work with our guy that we overpaid, which I'll say the whole way, the Haslams are morons. To me, it's a worst contract in the NFL because that was a guy coming off when you didn't know he was going to play again. He didn't take his first snap since 700 days since his last snap, and they're paying the price now with all this roster turnover. But that's why I would bump them out because their defense is great. Nick Chubb is back. He's squatting brick houses as he always does. But this Packers team, even a Los Angeles Rams team, they're closer to being good and healthy and have answers at the quarterback position, more answers than the Browns do at the most important position in football. That's what I think there.
Yeah, and I'll go bumping them out. And I actually thought maybe the Bengals. I mean, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. I mean, we'll see if Trent Brown, fan favorite in New England, right? We'll see if he helps them out a little bit on the offensive line. I think he's going back to right tackle. And then, I mean, Trey Hendrickson is, I don't know, top 5, definitely top 10 off the edge in the league. So, they have a pretty loaded roster themselves.
And that's even going out and getting Geno Stone to fill that Jesse Bates role. They didn't want to pay him. The defense looked terrible this last year. They got Geno Stone hoping to shore things up. And producer Brendan in our ear, our wonderful producer Brendan Wiedekind, telling me Joe Burrow was actually cleared for contact today, which is huge for the Bengals. He get the ground running. And you said it. I said, keep him healthy. Orlando Brown Jr. is at left tackle right now. Trent Brown is at right tackle. That dude is a road mover. He paves a way for anything, run blocking or protecting his quarterback. And shoot, if Orlando Brown Jr. doesn't work out at left tackle, Trent Brown can flip to the other side. The important thing with him, and it suffered in his tenure in New England, you got to be winning for him to be bought in and him to be locked in. And he wasn't that way as a Patriot. He's in a great situation as one of the best teams in the AFC in a very competitive conference. But I agree with you. With the wide receiver core, with what they have at quarterback, and with how they reconstructed their defense now, Sam Hubbard, Trey Anderson, 2 good edge rushers, shoring up the offensive line, I think they should be in the top 10 mix as well. But would they bump out your Cowboys? Because if we're putting 2 teams in, then that means 9 and 10. No. Cowboys, okay. All right. No. Sean, I appreciate you taking the time today. I know you got a lot to do. Thanks for hopping on Foxboro Rush. Where can folks find you on Twitter, social media, and, of course, all throughout training camp? Go ahead. Give the plug, bro.
Yeah, on Twitter, it's by Sean McGuire, and on Nesson, it's Nesson.com. We'll have a ton of Patriot stuff, training camp starting Wednesday. Just, we'll be there all week, and myself and Keegan will be there all summer. So really excited to get that going and be there in 48 hours. So that's great. And
that's Sean, S-E-A-N, none of that S-H-B-S. No. S-E-A, the right way to be spelled. Right, Sean McGuire, Google that with Ness, and you'll see all his articles come up. Same thing with Keegan Stiefel. Both of them do a tremendous job. I'll be at training camp as well. As always, Nesson has you fully covered, as does Foxboro Rush. This was this episode of Foxboro Rush. I'm George Balekji. He's Sean McGuire. Once again, please like, rate, review, subscribe to wherever you get your podcasts, wherever you're watching as well. We'll see you guys next time.